Hi there, I'm Heath Fletcher, host of The Healthy Enterprise. This episode is part of a limited series called Moneyball. It's in conjunction with the BLPN Club. BLPN's Moneyball program helps founders step up to the plate and knock fundraising out of the park. You'll hear about the people, their ventures, and their pitch-making experiences. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, Robert, thank you for joining me for this special episode of the Moneyball series with the Bullpen. Looking forward to hearing about your experience in this journey with them. And you can tell us all about Plakous Therapeutics.
Terrific. Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity. So, Rob Boyce, CEO of Plakous Therapeutics, a regenerative medicine company founded in late 2016 with a mission to leverage placental tissue to drive diseases of inflammation. Our initial focus is on a disease called Necrotizing Enterocolitis, or NEC. And it's a devastating disease that affects severely premature babies. And either we're talking about babies that are born before 28 weeks of gestation, normal gestation being 40 weeks. So we're talking 3 or 4 months early, weighing less than 2.5 pounds. And their GI tract's just not developed. And they get runaway inflammation, the tissue can die. And tragically, these babies, about a third of the babies that are diagnosed with NEC ultimately will die from the disease.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
And so how long has this disease been in existence? But for a long time? Or
Yeah, interesting question. So it was initially diagnosed probably in the 70s. Babies that were born before 30 weeks, many years back, certainly wouldn't survive. And the opportunity for our product, is bigger in Western or more advanced countries because you have to have an infrastructure where there's even an opportunity for a baby born this prematurely to have their lungs develop to a point where, frankly, they become at risk for NEC. So it's been around, again, 40, 50 years, clear diagnosis of the disease. And, it's interesting, we operate in the neonatal intensive care unit. That's where we'll be treating the babies and our medicine will be used. And there's just not been a lot of effort put into this patient population and developing medicines for these babies. Interestingly, Heath, the last time, take a stab at how long it's been since the FDA approved a product to specifically designed for babies in the NICU.
are we talking like 30 years?
We are talking 30 years. 1991 was the last time the FDA approved a medicine that was specifically designed for babies in the NICU. So that makes it a challenge because you're in this negative do loop where, we struggle with understanding a clear pathway. We understand what our regulatory requirements will be, but there's not a lot of recent precedent for this. And, investors are a little leery because they say, well, what's your regulatory path? Here's our regulatory path. Are there many companies that have done this? Well, not in a long time. Now, we're fortunate there are a couple of other companies now that are developing products for other diseases of the same patient population. So we're hoping that a rising tide will, in fact, raise all boats here, and we'll have an opportunity to bring our product to market, and that this patient population, the most vulnerable, and frankly, those with the most opportunity for lifetime value will benefit.
Was there a particular moment where this idea was sparked for this venture? Is there?
Sure. So our founder, Scott Washburn, is a practicing obstetrician gynecologist, and years back, about 15, 18 years ago, he started a birth tissue specific tissue bank. And that tissue bank was capturing donated tissue, umbilical cord, placental discs, amniotic membranes, and using those products for primarily wound healing. And he thought, well, the placental disc, the actual organ itself, is rich in proteins and has great immunomodulatory accepting factors within the body. So why don't we develop some products for that? And his partners weren't interested in doing that. And as a result, he said, you know what, I'm going to sell my piece of the business here at this birth tissue bank and start a company to develop products. And that was the genesis of Plakous back in 2016, with a focus on regenerative medicine. And we ultimately coalesced, having looked at a number of different indications, on necrotizing enterocolitis because of the medical need. Currently, Heath, there are no FDA-approved products for this disease. And
really?
There are no diagnostic tests. So there's a patient population in the US of about 50,000 babies who are at risk for this disease. And there's only, fortunately, about 3,000 that are diagnosed. The challenge is we don't know which of those 50,000 are going to get this disease.
Right.
And so our plan at Plakous will be to treat those at-risk babies prophylactically from the time they're born to prevent this disease from happening.
The disease. Very interesting. Wow. Okay, so how does Plakous do this? How do you do this? What's the
So the product itself, essentially what we do is we pull all of the proteins out of the organ, the placental organ. So we, in a simplified fashion, what we do is we lyse or pop, if you will, the cells, extract the proteins, and then we ultimately will lyophilize or dehydrate the product after we've processed it. And what we're left with is a shelf-stable powder that represents all of the proteins, the growth factors, the cytokines that exist in amniotic fluid we've captured. And interestingly, our product mimics amniotic fluid at mid-pregnancy, and that's where our patients, should be mid-pregnancy. And instead, they've been born, for whatever reason, severely prematurely. So the notion of Plakous' human placental extract is to rehydrate this product in breast milk, mom's milk, if she's able to pump, and or donated breast milk. And that's kind of the standard of care in the NICU, is to put our product back in, or to use breast milk for these babies. And there's been significant benefit shown in using breast milk. But by adding our product, which mimics amniotic fluid, to their feeds, what we're able to do is put an amniotic fluid-like product back into that nascent gut and provide the signaling to help their GI tract develop and continue to develop as if it were still in uterus.
Very interesting. Hey?
Yeah.
Wow. So you must get very interesting feedback when you present this, first time to, potential investors or other people.
We do. And I mean, it's fair to say that we open our presentation with a case study. A little girl named Laurel, who was born at Duke University Hospital here in North Carolina. When she was born, she weighed, Heath, 1.5 pounds. You could literally hold her in the palm of your hand. And within 10 days of life, she was diagnosed with necrotizing enterocolitis, had emergency surgery to save her life. She spent the next 5 months in the neonatal intensive care unit, went home, had to come back into the hospital for infections, and had 2 additional surgeries. So Laurel is today a thriving 6-year-old, but she is not without challenges from the fact that she had to be opened up at 10 days of life, only 26 weeks of gestation in order for her life to be saved. So it's a challenging disease, and it's presents a good story. I mean, certainly you can appreciate and everyone can visualize Laurel, which is great, but it's not without challenges. And certainly when you present, people appreciate that you're going after babies, and it's noble, people, but but they're also cautious for reasons I alluded to earlier around the regulatory pathway. We've got a very robust source. I mean, there are tens, hundreds of thousands of donated tissue every year. So there's a huge abundance of the resource material that we need to make our product. It's fundamentally safe. It mimics amniotic fluid. So we feel very good about the safety profile of the product, the abundance of the resources. But it's a tough time to raise money right now. And that's the challenge we have is it's a good story, but it's rare, it's pediatric, and that's an area that people are cautious about.
If we can use Laurel as the example here, as your case study, had maybe go back and if Laurel had access to this product at the time of when it was discovered, how could that have shifted Laurel's outcome?
Yeah, so we believe that necrotizing enterocolitis is essentially a death of the GI tract. So your GI tract gets infected, and ultimately the cells die, and that disrupts flow. What we've seen in our preclinical work, Heath, is that the product in treated animals, the GI tract is in fact developing. We're seeing the tract develop, and what we didn't see in our preclinical work was any perforations where the gut actually died, opened up, and it got infected, and what was in the intestinal cavity gets inside, and what's inside gets out. So we believe that our product will eliminate surgical necrotizing enterocolitis. We can provide the nutrients or the proteins to allow the body to accept food, grow, and become healthy without that surgical component. Kind of shift the curve of this disease so that the most severe cases don't happen, and that maybe you get a mild case. And while we're not a vaccine, that's not a bad analog for what we are. If you get NEC, maybe you get a less severe case, but we're going to prevent the worst cases. So we believe that Laurel wouldn't have had potentially some of the neurodevelopmental issues that she does struggle with. Because what we know is if you have to have surgery at this age, and again, about 1/3 of the babies, the 3,000 that are diagnosed, will require surgery. There's the correlation between having a neurologic deficit, if you've had to have surgery, is extremely high, well over 70%. So if you can prevent the surgery, you can take a lot of the comorbidities, neurologic deficit, out of the equation, which we think is a tremendous opportunity. And frankly, from a very pragmatic approach, it's where most of the cost is for this disease. Laurel's first year of life was well over, it was $985,000, so just about $1 million in costs in her first year of life. And those numbers are pretty typical for a baby that gets NEC. It is, you're $1 million baby, and that's an expensive disease.
Yeah, no, very much so. You started talking about it briefly about on being on the funding track and looking for investments, which is why you are involved in the Moneyball program.
Yes.
So tell me about when did you decide? Actually, maybe for a second here, when did you come on board Plakous?
So I joined Plakous in 2019. So the company's about 3 years old. We had some early proof of concept data that said, hey, this is probably going to take. And one of our board members, with whom I worked at Johnson & Johnson back in the day, if you will, called me up. She's on the board and said, hey, I think this is a really good opportunity for you, and I think you ought to take a serious look. And I did. Got to meet the founder, looked at the science, and said, I think there's something here. And so I left my last startup to join Plakous.
All right. And fast forward, we're here now. And at some point, you decided that getting on board with Bullpen and the Moneyball program was going to be what triggered you to do that? What was kind of the inspiration behind that?
Sure. Well, I first came on board with the bullpen, and this will be now my third uh, third bullpen JP Morgan conference. And, I don't even know how I was first introduced, but I came across Christian and the team, and they were organizing sort of a how to manage JP Morgan conference. And I was really impressed with the program that they had put together and the knowledge base that existed, and then had an opportunity to participate, visit the team, and was really impressed. And so I've been participated and active with the bullpen for several bio conferences now. And as I said, this will be my third JP Morgan conference being engaged with the group, because I think they do a great job of helping me get prepared, helping me get exposure, me being Plakous, get exposure at the event to folks that can make a difference in where we're headed.
What were you experiencing in that pitching process that you felt you needed a little bit more support on, or a little bit more strengthening?
There's a lot of things. I think we've got a good story. It's really tightening up the ask. To me, the biggest challenge where presentations I've done have really hinged is, they 101 of doing any presentation is know your audience. The challenge is when you're pitching it, knowing, is this audience someone who can fund me for $5 million? Can they fund me to $10 million? Can they fund me to $20 million? And, that's a challenge, in making sure you've got the right message for the right audience is key. And I think that that's been very helpful at the bullpen, and is knowing who's on the other side of the table at different times, because I've presented through the bullpen to folks that are, can help me with my $20 million raise, and some that would be more appropriate for $5 million.
And it's important for you to understand that, because what you ask or how you ask is different.
Exactly. And the positioning. So right now I'm targeting a $20 million raise. I could pivot that to an $8 million raise and then a follow on. I've got a business plan laid out that will allow me to bring in $60 million now in milestones, with clear cut milestones. And so working with the bullpen, I've been able to hone that into, okay, you're looking for $5 to $8 million. What are you asking for? How are you going to put what's the use of funds for that? And what are the milestones? Okay, you're asking for 20. Now, okay, what are you going to do with 20? Well, I'm going to do the 8 million, which is my IND enabling work. And then I'm going to follow that up with a phase 1-2 study. And that's what it's going to look like. And so that's 20 million all in. If someone were to come and syndicate for $60 million, what we would do is significantly accelerate our manufacturing to take my cost of goods down, so that on my ramp, I will see profitability much sooner. So I've built a plan with guidance from folks on the team to look at different ways to approach different investors. And we need in excess of 60. It's a matter of when and how.
Interesting. And do you find investors they're all looking for something different? Or they're all looking at you going, okay, let's hear what this guy has to say. Are they going to is he telling me what I want to hear? Or is he telling me the facts, right? How are they, what's in their head? What are they going through right in that moment?
Well, yeah, my perspective, Heath, is that every investor is ultimately, while they're there to make investments, they see hundreds and hundreds. They're also looking for reasons to say no. And the key is, how can I ensure that my presentation resonates so that they don't say no this time? And the goal of any initial pitch is not to raise money. It's to expose a potential investor to a story that's fact-based, that drives to a therapy which you have science and data to support, that leads me to say, Rob, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. I'd like to scratch a little bit below the surface to understand a little bit more about Laurel and this disease, a little bit more about your patient population and the pricing. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about your FDA interactions and what the regulatory risk is and how you have mitigated it and how you plan to mitigate it going further. So it's all about spending all of the time to create the building blocks of the model, of the pricing, of the story, so that you can get that down to an effective 5-minute presentation, which is actually the culmination of hundreds and hundreds of hours of labor to make sure you can defend every word of that presentation. And then the only other thing I'll say is making sure that you take that complex story and simplify it. I think a lot of the people that I've seen struggle are very bright, very capable scientists with great ideas that struggle to get the story in a compelling way. And so I think that, again, that's something that has been, the bullpen team has been very, and the coaching has been very helpful, is making sure you've got the right balance between the story, the facts, enough data to support the initial idea. You need to have it all, but be sure you don't spend too much time on the science.
Yeah, you can baffle people with science, with brilliance, right? if you put too much of it there. And interesting, your position being CEO is that you're not the founder, and often the founder is usually in the pitching seat, right? And do you find that there's a significant difference between being the founder and delivering a pitch as it is being the CEO and delivering a pitch?
Now, I think it can go both ways. I applaud, I'm here, so therefore I must, but I applaud Scott Washburn, our founder, for saying early on, this is not my skill set. He's an idea guy and he's tremendous at it. And he's constantly pulling us forward with the science and leveraging it into a lot of places, but this isn't his strength. There are a lot of founders who are stellar presenters and can articulate the story deep into the science, but also bring it to the surface. I look at my core strength and, coming out of the military, having flown airplanes, the Navy, and then I went to J&J on the marketing side. I come to it as, where's the story? Do I have the facts? So I bring, I'm a data hound. Much as I don't create the data, I'm not a scientist. I'm a mathematician by training. So I have an analytical bent, but I'm a storyteller. And if the facts are there, I like being able to tell that story.
Great. What's been your biggest challenge in the process here that you find, whether it's from the perspective of the company or your own personal perspective?
I think the biggest challenge that I'm facing right now is, in large part, it's the macro challenge that anyone investing right now is. That there's challenges with science, there's challenges with the regulatory agencies and where things are going, and some of that disruption is taking the luster off of the biotech industry as a whole, and certainly that's created significant headwinds, and that we're not unique in that. So that's certainly a challenge. Unique to Plakous, regenerative medicine is an area that if you understand, you can value. But it's an area that a lot of people don't look at or think about per se. So that's something certainly that, I focus to try and put people at ease that, being a birth tissue derived product, our product is still fundamentally safe. We don't have supply chain issues. And the benefit, the upside, is that we've got a product that's going to be well accepted in our patient population. And, to this point, the data truly support that we are, in fact, regenerating that GI tract in these itty bitties, at least in the preclinical model of, premature porcine model that we're currently using.
And a couple more questions here before we wrap up. But what stage are you guys at right now, anyways?
So right now we're, looking for a Series A. So we're in the process now. So we're preclinical. We're raising money to finish up an IND enabling study and get the manufacturing ready for the tox study and an IND submission. We're in the midst of a technology transfer to our contract manufacturing partner. That's going very well, and looking to have product queued up so that once the funds come, we're ready to run that final tox safety study and submit an IND. So, we're looking in that respect. It's about $8 million that we're looking to raise that'll get us through the IND and into that phase 1/2 clinical study. We've raised about $10 million to date, about half of that, Heath, through NIH funding, and the other half through primarily ultra high net worth investors in convertible notes, a series of convertible notes. So we've done well with what we have, but it's time to take the next step. So ultimately, would love to find a partner to help lead that Series A raise.
Okay. Well, on that note, if someone's looking to get more information from you, how do they connect with you, Rob?
Well, certainly, Rob Boyce at Plakous Therapeutics. You can contact me through the website, and certainly on LinkedIn. It's probably nowadays the best way to connect through, reach out, and I'm pretty active there. And would love to talk if anybody out there is interested in an investment, knows someone who may be interested in this rare pediatric space. But, we're going to make a difference for a group of patients that has been neglected for too long and has great opportunity for a long life to make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing cause. Excellent. So, well, good luck with everything in the coming weeks. You're heading to JP Morgan Week in San Francisco in January, correct?
Yes, looking forward to it. And
hopefully we'll see each other in person there and catch up again. So anyways, best of luck with all of that. And thank you for joining me today, Rob. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Heath.
Hearing the story.
And thanks to the Healthy Enterprise. I really appreciate the opportunity.